Mia Carter wiped the last of the crumbs from the worn-out counter of Daisy's diner, her fingertips brushing against the cool surface as exhaustion settled deep in her bones. She had been on her feet since dawn, balancing 2 jobs, fighting to keep the lights on in her tiny apartment, and struggling to save for her college tuition. Tonight was just like any other, until he walked in. The man looked rough around the edges. His clothes were tattered, his beard unkempt, and his eyes held the weariness of 1,000 hardships. He shuffled to the counter, his fingers trembling as he reached for the laminated menu. Mia watched him, heart aching. She had seen his kind before, those down on their luck, searching for a warm meal and a moment of dignity. She knew the look in his eyes, hunger, not just for food, but for kindness. She pulled out her last dollar bill from her apron pocket, sighed, and walked over with a smile. "Hey there," she said, keeping her voice light. "What can I get for you?" The man hesitated before whispering, "Just a cup of water, please." Mia bit her lip. She didn't have much, barely scraping by on tips. But something about the man touched her heart. She turned back toward the kitchen and placed an order. Moments later, she returned with a hot plate of food. A thick cheeseburger, fries, and a steaming bowl of tomato soup, her own dinner. "Here," she said, setting it down in front of him. "On the house." The man's eyes widened. I can't accept this." "Of course, you can." She grinned. "Just eat before it gets cold." His hands trembled as he picked up the spoon, his voice hoarse with gratitude. "Thank you. You have no idea what this means." Mia just smiled. Little did she know, her simple act of kindness would change her life forever. Sitting in the back of the diner was someone else, Lena Hastings, a woman of high fashion and even higher expectations. A regular at the diner, she often ridiculed Mia for her frugal clothes and weary expression. Tonight, she had a front-row seat to Mia's little act of charity, and she scoffed as she watched the scene unfold. "Pathetic," she muttered, swirling her overpriced coffee. "Feeding a homeless man when she can barely afford to feed herself." Her friend, Angela, snickered. "She'll never get anywhere in life if she keeps throwing away money like that." They shared a laugh, oblivious to the way the stranger glanced in their direction. The man finished his meal quietly, nodding his thanks to Mia before slipping out into the cold night. The next morning, Mia arrived at the diner, expecting just another day of long hours and small tips. But something unusual awaited her. A sleek black car was parked outside, an elegant man in a suit standing by the door. As she walked in, her boss, Mr. Jennings, handed her a crisp white envelope. "This came for you," he said, eyes wide with curiosity. Mia frowned and opened it. "Miss Carter. I would be honored if you would join me for dinner tonight at La Belle Étoile. Consider this a thank you for your kindness. Your friend." Mia blinked in confusion. La Belle Étoile was one of the most expensive restaurants in the city. Why would someone invite her? That evening, Mia hesitantly stepped into the grand restaurant, feeling painfully out of place in her borrowed dress. She scanned the room until her eyes landed on a familiar face. Her heart nearly stopped. The man from the diner sat at the center table, no longer in tattered clothes but in a finely tailored suit. His face was clean-shaven, his posture regal. He stood as she approached, offering a warm smile. "Miss Carter," he said. "I'm glad you came." Mia's mouth went dry. You're Alexander Reed," he confirmed. "CEO of Reed Enterprises." Her head spun. "The Alexander Reed? The billionaire philanthropist?" "I don't understand," she stammered. He chuckled. "I was testing humanity that night. Seeing if kindness still exists. And you gave your last meal to a stranger." Mia was speechless. "I've seen people turn their backs, mock, and ignore those in need," Alexander continued. "But you? You gave with no expectation. And that is why I'm here today, to return the favor. Tears welled in Mia's eyes. Meanwhile, Lena Hastings arrived at the restaurant, expecting her usual seat. When she saw Alexander, her heart leaped. She strutted toward him, tossing her hair back. "Mr. Reed," she purred. "It's a pleasure to see you here." He barely glanced at her. "Do I know you?" Lena faltered. "We've met, at the diner." Alexander nodded. "Ah, yes. You were the one who laughed at kindness." Lena's face paled. I believe our conversation is over," Alexander said, turning back to Mia. Lena stood frozen, humiliation washing over her. She had mocked Mia, belittled her, and now, she watched as the broke waitress she scorned sat at a billionaire's table. Over the next few weeks, Mia's life transformed. Alexander offered her a scholarship, fully funding her dream of studying business. He also introduced her to influential circles, where she could finally build a future beyond the diner. But most importantly, he taught her something invaluable: kindness, no matter how small, never goes unnoticed. And as she stood before a packed auditorium years later, preparing to give a speech on humanity and generosity, she glanced at the front row where Alexander sat, smiling. She had once given her last meal to a stranger. And that stranger had given her a new life in return.